You know, I'm always writing thrillers, so I mean, it was the former. I just right away I thought, you know, it was actually an adult book that I wrote as a sequel to Cut and Run, and then I switched publishers, and they didn't want earlier characters, so I could have, you know, just changed names and rewritten characters and things, but I looked at the book, and my assistant at the time, a woman named Louise Marsh, had read several of the early drafts, and she kept coming into my office and saying, you know, this really feels like a young adult book, not an adult book to me. And I would go, get out of my office, you know, you're all wrong. And then I finally listened to that one day and went, you know, this might be a young adult book. So I ran the idea by Disney, and they said, let's try it. So it's kind of an adult book cut in half. I had a 700-page manuscript for my adult book. It ended up 400 pages by the time I weeded out, you know, down, sort of condensed the story into something I thought a younger audience could handle. But it's still, it's sort of tightly, highly plotted. Oh yeah. It's a bit of a sophisticated read for, you know, real young kids, and yet so far, you know, knock on wood, the emails I've gotten back have said the kids are liking it. So we'll see. You know, I don't dumb them down. I think when you write for a certain age group, like the younger books, you're not going full volume on vocabulary, but you're not putting a word in and going, oh, I can't write that word. I don't do that. It's just, I get myself into a headset that's more near my kids when I write it. And so it's coming more from that place in me than the adult, you know, 50-something Ridley Pearson. So there's probably a difference that goes on subconsciously, but I'm not sitting there, you know, writing apartheid and then saying, oh, I can't use that word, you know. And Day of the Jackal's a great one. So is Eye of the Needle. Right. And those are about the same era.
That was the first one I ever read.
Yeah, that's one of the first ones I read. I read Eye of the Needle. I read Born Identity, Mattery's Circle, both by Ludlum. Those books blew my mind. That's when I really got excited about writing. I had read all of John D. MacDonald, and I still hold him up on a throne above all others, but I read those couple, Eye of the Needle, Day of the Jackal, Born Identity, Mattery's Circle, and just said, this is what I want to write.
And
these are books
so that was what woke you up to it.
Well, I love that. That whole genre, and I try to write in that same genre. I'm not at that level, I'm not saying that, but I mean, I just love to dig in and get into the sort of psychology of crime, and more so than just knives and blood and guts and following hair and fibers and that kind of stuff. We're in a rock band together.
I was going to ask you about the rock band.
That's how we met. 15, 16 years ago, we met. We were founding members of the Rock Bottom Remainders. Yes, the most wonderfully awful band you've ever heard. But Stephen King.
What do you play?
I play bass guitar. Dave plays lead guitar. But we have Stephen King sometimes.
Amy Tan, right?
Amy Tan, Dave Barry, Scott Turow.
Oh, God.
Greg Iles, Matt Groening from The Simpsons, Mitch Albom.
Oh, my God.
Roy Blunt Jr.
Oh, wow.
It's a really fun group. And Dave and I actually knew what you know, when you say a song is in a key, Dave and I both knew what that meant.
But no one else did.
And no one else did. So we became friends early on. I happened to be at Dave's playing one of these performances about a week later, and I mentioned it to Dave, said, you know, I'm thinking about writing a prequel to Peter Pan because there are all these great unanswered questions right at the beginning of that book. Right. And his eyes kind of went wide, and I said, yeah, you want to do this with me? Because I could use some humor and kid-like attitude. And he said, sure. So having neither of us had ever collaborated, we jumped in and
So how was that? Because it's a very different experience, right?
It's wild, and it's one of my favorite things. I don't know that there are that many, if any, other people I could do it with, because I trust Dave completely. There's no ego in these books. Yeah. We outline these things for several days, then we divide them by character. You know, one of us takes the psychotic, piratical characters, and one of us takes the happy-go-lucky, humorous, kid-like characters. And if chapter 5 is mostly the kids, Dave writes a draft, sends it to me. I can do whatever I want to it. I butcher it, send it back. He butchers that, send it back. You know, so we go back
chapter by chapter. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and we maybe edit each chapter 6, 11 times.
Do you? So you must plot it out ahead of time.
No explanation. We outline the whole book. Yeah. You know, he's always, when we do our group little, you know, book tour things, he's always saying, I'm the big nuclear power plant of plotting and all this. It's not true. And Dave's an amazing plotter. He's an amazing writer. Phenomenal guy. And if anything, all of our work is 60-40 Dave. I mean, really? Yeah, he's incredible. And he's always putting himself down and saying he can't plot his way out of a paper bag. And even during writing Big Trouble, he sent me some emails and he said, so I'm halfway through the book. does a book need a plot? All this stuff. But that book has a great plot.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fabulous book. So, you know, I don't know what he's talking about. I'm writing 4 right now, every day. I
so
write.
You work on 4 books a day?
4 books a day.
How do you do? All right, so tell me what is your day? How does it go?
I get up early, and
how early is early?
Early's pretty early. I was up at 4:30 this morning.
All right.
And I devote, you know, if I'm not on book tour, I try to devote 4, 5, 6 hours to my Ridley crime thriller for adults. That's my bread and butter. That's my most important thing. That takes me to about 10:30 or 11, and then in the afternoon, it's about an hour and a half a project. So those move slower. So but they can move slower because generally, except for these things I do with Dave, which end up 500 pages, most of the kids' books are a little smaller. They're more like 300-page manuscripts instead of 600-page manuscripts. And then I've got it outlined. I outline everything, so I know where it's all going. I'm writing the next Steel Trap right now, and I am dying to know how all this fits together. You know, I've put it together, but will it work? And what are the characters going to be thinking? And so it's exciting to me to put something down and jump into the next project. The first is you have to just read constantly, and that's really the biggest one. And you have to read. You have to be a gourmet reader. You got to slow down and read comma by comma. And when you read, you know, a paragraph that just sparkles, you've got to stop. Instead of getting excited and moved through somebody's work, you got to stop and go, how the heck did the person do that? Because in theory, we've all got about the same words to deal with. We certainly have the same letters. So why can't I write that way? And you can study that and go, oh, and you start to see the cleverness, deceptively clever writing that a lot of the best writers do.